Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Portfolio Review. We've gathered experts from across three core disciplines: art, design, and engineering/programming. They will be taking you through what to expect when submitting a portfolio, the common mistakes/pitfalls that people generally fall into, as well as some useful tips and tricks. They'll be doing this while showing off their own portfolio work when they first started off, or poignant examples from their studios. So, without further ado, let's start it off with art.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan. I am the art director at Playside Studios.
Hello, I am Hana Jones. I am a mid-3D artist at Playside Studios.
And today we'll be talking to you all about art. We're basically going to be going through Hana's portfolio and targeting a conversation around what we look for when hiring artists, as well as just general advice around setting up your portfolio to land a job in games. What we're going to be talking about is generally targeted towards students and those applying for junior art roles. So with that being said, I'll pass it to Hana to open up her folio.
I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Let's move that off to the side. So this is my student portfolio here, which is, this is my folder.
So this is actually the portfolio that Hana got hired with when she started off at Playside as a junior artist. A key thing to notice straight away is there isn't a lot of work. So when we see a lot of junior portfolios come through, there's a sense of like this feeling where you've got to show everything. And that's not the case. And Hana's done a really good job of showing that off here where, she can speak better to this, but there's only 4 key pieces here, and each one is showing off a unique skill set that she can bring to the table as a junior artist, with the first piece you see being her latest as a fully textured and modeled character that is also posed. And then we've got a hand-painted prop and weapon. And then we've got some painting studies that show her knowledge of color theory as well. So I'll pass it to you, Hana, to just go through that stuff. If you'd like to pull up one of them.
Yeah. I'll start with this. So just to go over the main profile or folio a bit, this is important to make a really good impression. So make sure that you trim out the stuff you don't want and that everything's appealing. And start with your strongest, don't go from best to worst. So starting with my strongest piece here, this is a character I modeled for my second year student project. So if I scroll through, I'm actually going to bring up, I'll do that later. So just looking at this, you can see pretty well is the texturing and the pose. It's very dynamic and interesting. You notice I don't have a call out sheet or a sculpt. That is because I basically tried to learn a hand painted style, which I could do all in 3D code. I also modeled this in the pose. So putting a wireframe, or how I did my textures, is basically like offering up a bit of weakness and make sure you pretty much call out anything that's unnecessary or takes away from your overall image. And always start.
One thing you've done really well here, Hana, as well, that's worth mentioning is that you've started with your beauty render first. A big thing with when you're presenting your portfolio is you want the information to be as easily digestible as possible to the person looking at it. So when you're sending it off to a studio, you're applying, the art director, lead artist, recruiters are looking at your work. You want to make sure that they're seeing what they need to see as quickly as possible. So here, with the way that Hana's laid it out, where you see the beauty render, the main image, the final image that she's put together first. Then after that, you've got the Sketchfab link, so you can have a look around at the full 3D model. That's a really nice way to break it up, because the first thing I see is what I need to see. I can see the art. It's captivated me. It's kept me in the piece. I scroll down. I want to see more. And then I can start to look at, cool, here's the 3D model. And then continuing down, you can start to see some more angles of the model. The reason why this is really important is if you put a Sketchfab link first, and I see that a lot, like more than I'd like, is that I then, as the person who is hiring an artist, have to spend, 30 seconds, a minute, however long it takes to load up, to wait until I can actually see your finished piece. And if I'm, for an example, going through 50 portfolios in a day, I'm not going to spend longer than, a couple of minutes on each portfolio. So making sure that you present all your information as clearly as possible and ensuring that it's as easily as accessible as possible is really important.
I'm actually going to bring up my first year student project. You can still preview old unpublished stuff on ArtStation, which is cool. So you can see the first thing I do in this first year one is I start with a Sketchfab fab link, big no-no. And then I go in the order of basically how I did my assignment hand in. So I started with the final result, then went into sketches. I pretty much included everything totally unnecessary, pick a few meaningful ones that look good. Then I went into sculpt, then I went into render, then I went into iteration. And you notice that if I just skim through this, the resolution of each image as well keeps changing. And there's no consistent nice flow of theme in terms of medium. So it's a lot harder to digest the information, and it's a lot more unpleasant because of the inconsistency in quality. Yeah.
Sure. And that thought process around how you're presenting your work and the cleanliness of it and the beauty of the presentation and consistency also feeds into, how we're going to look at you as an artist. If you're not taking the care to make sure that there's consistency across your presentation, that's going to tell me that, hey, if you're working on an asset or you're working on a piece of art that's going to go into one of our games, how can I rely on you taking that full ownership over the quality that's being presented in the game, the consistency of the art that's being presented in the game as well. So really owning that process and ensuring that it all fits together and feels coherent. Not only is it just we've got to make sure that everything is really clean for my portfolio, but it just shows a personality trait and due diligence that you as an artist do in your work that is good to have as a skill set as an artist in the industry.
Yeah. I have a few mantras that I have, which I applied in my portfolio, and I kind of apply in every situation in work, even in resumes and things like that, is just keep it simple. Consistency is key. Simplicity sells. All of these things make a big difference.
Yeah, with that as well, with simplicity sells, that brings up a good point around how you choose to present your work and your portfolio. A lot of people tend to make the mistake of making their own websites using Wix or Squarespace or whatever is out there.
Yeah.
ArtStation's free. You can make an account, make a profile, upload your work, share it. Really easy. Sure, some people say not to use it because you're then being compared to all these other artists that are on the platform. But when you're sending this to a recruiter, they're not going to close your profile and look at other profiles on the platform because they're already doing that. They're going to be seeing your work. They're going to be seeing the information that they need to see easily because it's all laid out in a nice grid format. You don't need to worry about how that's all being presented like you would on Wix or any other custom website. You can direct them to the information that you want them to see based on how you order your images in your grid view. And it's just very accessible. It loads quickly. You want to ease as much of the pain of the process of a recruiter as possible, because while applying for a job is scary, it's also a painful process for those who are doing the recruiting of going through all the applications, filtering through all the work. They want to get in, look at your work, see if it's good enough for the role that they're trying to fill, and move on and move through that process and move you to that next stage. So the easier you make it for them to see what you're trying to sell them and make them move you to that next stage, the better chance you have, because the longer that they're fumbling around trying to find your work, they might just give up halfway through.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As a student, I put a lot of effort into a Wix website, and someone raised a really good point, which is basically I'll bring up it here. I just took some screenshots. Is the recruiter's not familiar with pressing tabs and all of these things, and someone would say oh, it's good to show your creativity through fonts. it's like really not. Just like cut to the important thing, which is your folio here, and make sure that all your thumbnails are just as appealing as possible. Because like your thumbnails, those are assets as well. Like you should think about that. Like that's something which I probably could have done better in this here. Like you can see this fourth one, I've like zoomed it in so you can't see another plant. This one, the third one could have used a vignette so it flows a bit nicer between the blacks. All of that stuff kind of helps and matters. So it's better to invest your time there, not in like, fancy formats and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And in saying that as well, Hannah, around, fonts and formats and all that sort of stuff, that actually feeds into your resume. So another part of an application process and when going for a job is obviously you want to submit a resume. This doesn't get looked at until your portfolio has already been passed, right? Like if I'm looking at a junior portfolio, a junior application, first thing I go to is I just click through every single application, open folio, then click through all the tabs of all the folios, and I usually only give like 30 seconds per folio, just because of the amount of applications we get. And if you can capture my attention within the 30 seconds, then I stop, I linger, I look at the work, I make sure I see that it's good, and then I usually progress that person to the next stage, which would generally be either a phone call from one of our recruiters or a first stage interview. But then also once we've done that, we then look at the resume. So as an artist, there's a sense where you need to add a bit of individuality, uniqueness to your resume. But I find a lot of people who tend to do that actually add a lot of clutter to the resume or CV. You're better off keeping it modern, clean, and simple, and keeping only the relevant information that's on there. Don't show off those little bar charts of like, I am, 87% proficient in Maya, or I am expert level at Maya. Like, don't put that stuff. Just say the knowledge that you have, the software knowledge. Don't say what level you're at, because that's a really bad way to gauge your skills. Like defining what an expert level at Maya or Photoshop is really hard, because while you might be expert level compared to your peers, when you get into the door, once you're in the industry, being able to say you're expert level compared to maybe a senior artist at your studio can be really hard. So it's just best to leave that stuff out there. It doesn't add any extra bonus points to your application. It just looks silly, to be honest. And yeah, just keep that information clean and simple, because the messier it gets, people are going to judge your art skills around that as well.
That's a good point for like projects as well. Like sometimes people think, oh, I need to include everything, all my iterations, or like type out like my thought process into the work. And all of that stuff doesn't really get looked at often. It's kind of like your folio just speaks for itself in the quality, and people looking at it will be able to figure out really quickly what sort of skills and programs you can use.
With that point, Hannah, I'd say it does and it doesn't. Like when you're showing a portfolio piece as a junior or a student especially, it's really good to try to break down your work a bit more and show your wireframes and show your textures and how you've maybe laid out your UVs, or if it's UI, like the thought process behind the decisions you made to land behind like a certain UX layout. Showing off all that stuff's really, really good. It's just making sure that the way you present it is not cluttered and is clear and is communicating that information as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, nice. Awesome.
Cool. So we've covered quite a lot already. I mean, I wish we had more time to talk about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, so quick.
But to recap over a couple of things. First things first is your portfolio is only as strong as your weakest piece. So keep it simple. Don't put every bit of art you've ever done in your life on there. As some people like to put it, kill your babies. Keep it simple. Like you only really need 4 or 5 pieces that are really strong, and try to break those pieces down and show us the exploration and show us multiple angles, whatever you can show off with those pieces, great. Just make sure that they are the highest quality that you can currently achieve. That means like, if you did something in your first year of uni and now you're at your final year, cut that first year stuff off. It was great at the time, but you're better than that now. And then second to that would be, I guess, presentation. So make sure your presentation is clean, consistent, everything's easy to get into. If you send a folio link, make sure that I can access that folio easily. make sure that the information is easy to access, and then same with your resume again, make sure that it's clean, easy to read, easy to see. Am I missing anything? I feel like those main 2 points, really. Anything else, Hannah?
I kind of had a point which was like basically get like feedback on your folio, like your overall folio. Like sometimes it's so easy to just fill it up with things you're like emotionally attached to, like your babies, but finding like some sort of support that can honestly give you some decent advice over your folio is really important. Like you should
definitely.
get eyes on it. Never hide your folio and be like, oh, it's not ready yet, because you can pick up gigs from someone taking the time to look at it and be like, oh, that's not half bad. Just be ready and open to feedback like all the time.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good closing piece. With that being said, go to networking events, find as many people as possible to give you that feedback. But yeah, I think we're out of time. So thanks, everyone. It was lovely to talk to you all. And, enjoy the rest of the talks. See ya.
See ya.
Hello all, welcome to the design section of the portfolio reviews. I'm James Carlton. I am a senior game designer at Wargaming Sydney, and I'm here with Ben Carruthers.
Hi, I'm Ben. I work as a mid-tier designer here at Playside Studios in Melbourne.
We've all been doing this for a while. We've had our shares of portfolio on both sides of both sides of submitting and reviewing, I think. Definitely made a lot of mistakes, definitely seen some mistakes and seen some really good stuff. And I guess we're here to sort of kind of provide some insight on what to expect when creating your own portfolio, some things to sort of not fall into, and some really great things to do if possible, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I think one of the first sort of pointers is are there any sort of common mistakes that students or people working on their primary or preliminary portfolios when they're working up to making that submission? What kind of mistakes do they tend to do? I think one point that I've got is that they tend not to go outside of the sort of core coursework that they've sort of worked on. There's a lot of really great sort of portfolios that I've seen. I can't necessarily say that I was part of the hiring process, but that I've seen where they're really showing a lot of sort of their side sort of projects and things that they're learning, and they're really extrapolating on. I would say like what was their hypothesis when they were coming in? I know hypothesis is a big old word for it, but like what necessarily were they trying to find out from this little prototype?
Yeah. And so is that sort of in the way that some people can kind of break out of that sort of formula of how the coursework went? You see a lot of things that are kind of all the same, and then when something's different, you just go like, oh wow, this person's really thought of some cool ideas. Is that?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if that's a similar sort of result that you're seeing, James.
It can definitely sometimes feel like you there's a lot of kind of trends, I guess, in sort of what people I think is really cool, and whether that's from sort of indie, that they're taking cues from like really great indie games that have done some really original stuff, or that they're sort of kind of reaching out to the AAA space and trying to just sort of grab a bit of that AAA sort of big picture idea and sort of put it into their work. And both of those are good things. It's when you see something that you go, I have no idea where this person kind of got that idea from. Wow, is this their own stuff? Like this is really coming from their own like mind. That's really exciting when you see something like that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like some of the best sort of things, like they'll work on something that's a little bit out of the box. They'll work on their own little prototype and maybe a little bit experimental. But like also sort of seeing some of that sort of thought out, planned and articulated type, that energy that they're putting into what they're displaying, and they're not afraid of showing, like, you know, it didn't necessarily turn out. It didn't turn out because of X, Y, and Z. That's the kind of learning that, like, you can never get the design right the first time, which is unfortunate. But if you can show that you're learning from the things that you're working on, your value is pretty high.
And I think people would be surprised how much, like, I guess, polish and perfection kind of doesn't matter that much. Like, when you're reviewing a portfolio, honestly, we'll excuse a lot of stuff if we can see something else, I think. And I definitely don't think you should stress about, say, providing a complete game or providing this bug-free, perfect experience. If you can then show us something like we've never seen before, or something that's just like, oh wow, I can get into their thought process and see what they were trying to do there, and that thought process is really interesting.
I think sometimes students, and myself included, we had a lot of emphasis on what that capstone project was going to sort of do for us beyond the coursework, that it was really going to set where we are in the industry. And that's, like, the capstone project from an education point of view is fantastic. It's a fantastic structure, but there is always more projects after that to really show your skills and really show
definitely
what you're doing.
And what sort of gets you the best marks for a project, i.e. it's not buggy, there's nothing missing, etc., isn't necessarily what's going to apply when you show an employer, like, or in an interview. They're probably not going to stress out about as much. But then I guess there are some small things that are like it's got to work. I know with mine, one of my final things is on Flash, and even back when I did it, I don't know, 15 years ago, that Flash was very much on the way out even then, and it was flaky to run, and I had it die in, like, sort of presentation kind of settings. That's really tough. You really don't want that sort of thing, especially if you're relying on people to look at it, like, on a web page, sight unseen, where you're not guiding them through, I suppose. And you often, when you present that in, like, an education sort of setting, you're presenting it in the absolute best possible situation where you're there and you've tested it for half an hour before you're, like, going up on stage or whatever you're presenting it to. Expect that you may have to hand this off to someone on the other side of the planet and just hope it all works, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I know there may be some students out there that don't necessarily like to get their hands on tools in Unity, Unreal, or some such other engine, RM2K, 2000, things like that. But I think one thing that is quite valuable, because it really helps from, like, a role and responsibility pointer that we have here at Playside, is that you do have some understanding of Unreal, Unity. If not, then you don't necessarily need to be an extremely strong programmer. We're happy to see prototypes from visual scripting. It doesn't matter. We're not like, we like to see stability, because we don't necessarily like to see it crash on you. But even paper prototyping is still an extremely strong tool set to have. I don't think we see enough paper prototyping.
Definitely. I mean, I didn't do anything in Engine at all for my final assignment. I was doing stuff in Flash and After Effects, and something like a teaser movie was sort of what I was going for, a teaser kind of website stuff. I mean, I can show some stuff now, I guess. Where are we? Put the share screen. So, like, this is my portfolio, like, final piece I did. It was for a AAA style, GTA style game set in Shanghai in the 1920s. I did this whole presentation where it was kind of a big menu that sort of went into all this stuff about the about the story, and there was, you know, all these, I had like a newspaper of something in there. And like
Sorry,
none
James,
of this.
I'm not sure if it's just sharing on screen
Oh,
yet.
okay. Yep. Where I press the shit. There we go. All right. So yeah. So this is like the. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like the menu in Flash, ancient stuff, a little bit animated. Did this in 3D. Created some newspapers of like history and stuff. And a bunch of just all these sort of web pages that was this complete sort of multimedia experience that no longer runs like that. But that's by the by. And so none of this is in engine. There's probably far too much detail. The idea itself is like horrendously kind of naive in that I sort of had this idea of creating this huge GTA style game, which is just monstrously enormous for a student project. It's sort of admirable. You really don't want to make your ideas too big. And I got really, really lucky in that the company I mainly applied for, which was making LA Noire, so that was Team Bondi. They were making a 1940s, 50s kind of GTA game, so it was really appropriate. And honestly, I got super lucky. A big chunk of this kind of reads like a history project, not a game design document. But like there were some cool ideas in there, I guess. Like I had one of the things I specifically remember doing was sort of discussing how the very start of the game would go. You'd be in this walled city in Shanghai, like a little small part. So, you know, it keeps you in the tutorial area for one of a better reason, because there was a plague on. So that to me is like a good design idea, and shows that someone will be thinking about design problems that come along when you're like working on a huge game like this. And it's kind of, that's the nuggets that are really interesting, rather than this gigantic overwritten backstory and kind of thing. I guess that's at least my take on it.
Yeah. Like I love the look of this. I absolutely do, but I totally feel that sentiment of like, this is your capstone project. There's a lot that you sort of need to impress by comparison to like as part of the rubric of your studies, and also what necessarily can be taken from this capstone and how you can sort of present even like some of the questions that or the design problems that you were looking at. That's pretty fantastic, that the correlation between what you're working on and where you went to for LA Noire. I'm a little jealous.
And a lot of luck. A lot of luck. You know, if I'd supplied this to say like someone making a first-person shooter where it's all just run and gun, they'd be like, oh, to me in my head at least, they'd be like, that's cool. None of this like historic writing and what is really relevant. They'd look at it and go, hey, it's polished, it looks nice. He can probably craft a sentence. That's great. Has he ever made a gun feel good? Would be my worry. Nothing here says that. So that's some of the things to kind of think about. And you know, narrative design jobs don't come along that much that often, so it's could be really tricky.
That's unfortunately true. I just might slide in with just one of the actual capstone project that I worked on during my uni days. So please bear with me. So this is actually this was a way too edgy game that we worked on. For some unknown reason, we had you're a thief and you're going through a catacomb that's somehow also in the afterlife. A lot of polish, a lot of stuff didn't necessarily work, but like the questions that we were really trying to drill down on was like, how do we make any sort of jump scares and like just with what very little artwork that we could do. I mean, that's kind of fine. I was using this as part of my portfolio for a long time, and this is how I was able to sort of work through a lot of contract design and a lot of contract jobs. You know, what kind of atmosphere we could do with a limited time. Yeah. And then like also, how do we sort of build a bit of an ecosystem? There's this creature within it that is you're unable to sort of attack or sort of fight against. But yeah, I think those kind of things, when you sort of either get into an interview or you get into a conversation, or somehow write a blog about it. What were your thoughts? What were you aiming to do? What were you trying to sort of do within that project? And that's showing you're working. And when you show you're working, you're showing a lot of things to take faith into.
And as like, I guess just my interview sort of cap came on then, you said like, oh, okay, so there's this character that you can't fight against in this horror game. Wearing my interview cap, I want to say like, okay, well, how did you deal with that? What did you do to make this game interesting when you can't shoot or just, fight that character? If you can then have the answers to that and you can talk eloquently about these are the decisions we made, these are the systems we implemented for that, you're already just fitting the bill so well when you can talk about the ideas rather than show a whole bunch of like pretty looking stuff. They want to hear you talk. I mean, that's most of what design is, I think, is talking through stuff before you do it, because we're not the ones who do it so much, I guess.
Absolutely. Communication is key. Yeah. I mean, to your point before, James, you're talking about, it doesn't necessarily need to, I think you said something along those lines, it doesn't need to function 95, all the time, or it doesn't need to look super pretty. When you're working at a company similar to ours, we have artists.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but you need to be able to communicate with those artists about, some considerations as to what things may look like. But look, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you, James. I'm actually really I really love the look of your project.
Yeah, it's the same with you. Like, it's just really awesome to discuss this kind of stuff and share just sort of some weird memories of kind of starting out in the industry and feeling like I knew absolutely nothing. And then you get to that point when you sort of, I guess, in your career where you kind of realize, hey, I kind of do know some stuff. And even when you come just out of like college or out of your degree, you're like, you do know some stuff. Make sure someone else knows you know that stuff as well. It's a big part of it.
100%.
So thanks for joining us. I think that was pretty cool. And get your portfolios together, make them look good, make them work, and best of luck.
Yeah, all the best, everyone, with you for your portfolios, and looking forward to seeing some of your work come across.
Hi everyone, my name's Darcy. I'm a senior software engineer at Sledgehammer Games in Melbourne. If you don't know, we make a little game called Call of Duty, and I've been at Sledge for about 2.5 years. I was on the audio engineering team and now I'm on the core engineering team. Michelle?
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle. I also work at Sledgehammer Games with Darcy. I'm lead gameplay engineer. I've been at Sledgehammer for 1.5 years now, and I've been in the games industry for about 15 years. All right, so today we are here to talk to you about portfolio reviews. Now we're doing sort of an engineering programming focused side of things. So we're going to talk a bit about the recruiting process at Sledgehammer for engineers, for new engineers. So first of all, you'll submit your CV and you might have a link to your portfolio. What that might look like is you might have a link to GitHub, which can show some example code that you've written. Or you might have a link to a website which might show images or videos of games projects that you have worked on.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with portfolios is, recruiters will see sometimes hundreds of applicants. You just want to get the stuff you're most proud of and you most want them to see accessible the easiest. Because we don't want to be like clicking through all these pages to find the stuff you actually want us to see.
Yep, And with your code as well, don't forget to do reviews of your own code before you post it on GitHub. Just sanitize your comments, make sure they're appropriate.
Yeah, just like you spell check and format your resume, do the same things with your code. I mean, I've personally seen some very weird things left in comments that are submitted, and I'm like, maybe don't send this to a potential employer. It's not the best choice.
Yeah, so after you've submitted your CV and gotten to the next stage at Sledgehammer, at least we start off with a cultural interview. So this will be on a panel with probably 3 people. The idea of this is to get to know you as a person, what you're going to be like to work with. We're also interested to find out what area you might like to work in. We have a number of different engineering teams at Sledgehammer. So my team is the gameplay team. We also have a systems team. Darcy's on the core team. We have rendering team, online, tools, build, QA, audio. Have I missed any? Probably UI.
Yeah, probably.
Apologies, I've missed anyone, but lots of different teams, lots of different skill sets. So we like to put people where they will fit.
And I think it's also important to look at interviews. It's not just the company interviewing you to see if you can do the job. We're also seeing if, you know, we can offer you what you want, because we might have a role available, but it might not be the right thing for you. So it's like, it's a two-way street, you know, make sure that the company is also able to give you what you want, not just you're able to give the company what they want.
Absolutely. And that then leads into a technical programming test, which we have our engineers sit. These are different depending on the team that you might be going for. So for gameplay and core, at least, we focus on C++, but other teams might focus on Python or C# or whatever languages they most likely use. We sort of use this as a guide to figure out where your knowledge sits, which might lead into what level you might come into on the team. We also understand that no technical test is perfect, so you have to think of it more as we are understanding what level you're at. We also try not to prescribe an answer. We understand that all questions, different people might come at in different ways and different solutions, and we completely value that, different ways of thinking, not just what we thought the answer was.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Michelle's experience was, but I personally hate technical tests, and I did terribly on my interview for Sledge's one, but they decided to give me a chance anyway, and I did very well on the technical interview, so they got me through. But yeah, I'm yet to meet someone who actually likes tests.
No, I'm with you. I hate them. But yeah, and we understand that, and that we'll look at that. And the next level, like Darcy said, is the tech interview. So if you get in there, the idea is to come and do a presentation on something you've worked on, a game or a tech demo, and present that, and then be prepared for technical questions on the work that you've done.
Yeah, and especially if you're a junior and just coming in, we are less interested in what you already know. It's kind of more important to show that you're willing to learn, because we do understand if you're coming in at a junior level, you're not going to have an experience of someone who has been doing this for a few years. But if you are like, show that you're interested in learning, you're quick at learning, you're excited about it, that's actually very appealing to us, rather than maybe you don't know specifically this certain thing that we use, because we can teach you that.
Absolutely. Asking questions is really important if you don't understand stuff. And yeah, it's the idea is getting to know how you work and what you'd be like to work with. And for one of the very first interviews I did was a tech interview, and I was live demonstrating a game I had made, and it crashed halfway through, which was a excellent excellent way to go. We all had a bit of a chuckle, and I restarted it and just kept going. But it happens, absolutely, don't worry. Maybe pre-record your game and do a video so that doesn't happen if you like. Also
Pretty
fun.
sure it happened to us at like our launch event live on Twitch, and we were all watching it and it crashed and we're all like, oh no.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it happens.
So next we were thinking we'd go into an example technical question that might be asked and what we're sort of looking, I guess, for the answer. So the question is, implement a function that counts the nodes of a binary tree. And as a second part, implement a function that prints the values out of each node of a binary tree. So for this type of tech question, we're looking for, do you have an understanding of different data structures? So in this case, it's the binary tree structure. In the answer, depending what code, so for us, we'd focus on C++. So we'd see if you have an idea of how to use pointers, for example. Do you understand recursion and how to write a recursive function? But this question is a generic question, right? So you could answer it in pseudocode if you like, or if it's or C# for Unity style game studios. It's the same data structure, can be written in different ways. Could write it in Java or Python. So it's a good question to get your base understanding of data structures in programming. Just going to share my screen. So in this example, you might be given the questions here, and you can have a look at just doing a simple tree node struct. We've got some left child, right child pointers, because we know for binary trees, it can only have 2 children per node, a left and a right. And you might have a recursive functions like this to count the nodes. And for print nodes as well, we have another recursive function. So not much code here, but it shows we're looking for an understanding.
And like tech tests are always, they seem so intimidating when you get them, but when you've actually like done them and wrapped your head around them and like actually written the code, you do realize this seemed a lot more scarier when I started than now that I'm done.
Yep. And if you don't get some of the syntax right either, then that's fine too. It doesn't need to be 100% perfect, but
yeah, in the real world we have IDEs.
Yes. Yep. So there's just an example there. What else about tech questions?
Tech tests. I guess another thing that this has actually been more my experience when applying for jobs than tech tests. So Sledge is the only place I've ever had to do that. But they've like personally asked me to give them examples of code that I've worked on, and to do that for to review. Sorry. I'll share this. So this is actually part of one that for my final year university project, this is one of the files in the game that I wrote for that. And I submitted this project for my first games job, which was engineer at an indie studio called Samurai Punk. So what this game was is there were up to 4 players going down a hill racing, and they were all attached together with a rubber band. And so this file here was the code for the rubber band. And I was told later what got me the job is specifically this did procedural mesh generation, and that was a little bit different to all the other code examples that everyone else had submitted. So because what I did was a little different, that was kind of what pushed me over the edge. But yes, back in the days, I was very pedantic about commenting, as you can see here. This is obviously in Unity too, if anyone noticed there's mono behavior, and it's been a few years since I've touched Unity. So let's see if I remember much of this. But yeah, it's like I ran an Olmo formatter over this, so it was all nice. I had cleaned it up. Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, so if, say, Darcy was giving a tech interview and describing this, we might ask things like, what was the algorithm, or how did you implement the rubber band?
Yeah, and thanks to past Darcy for writing this, but I'm generating the convex hull. So if you've got like multiple points, a convex hull gets all the points on the outside and creates a loop. I forgot what that was, but I had written a comment, so now I remember.
Comments are good.
Another question someone would ask is, if you did this again, what would you do to make it better? And I guess me quickly looking at this, I'm using LinkU in here, and that's not the fastest thing to do in an update loop for a game in C#. It could be different now, but this was, I wrote this 2016, which performance-wise, I probably shouldn't have done that. Wonder if there's anything, there's probably other things I could have done to make this better, but not on the fly.
And that's a really good point. Like, thinking about your old code and knowing what you know now and the knowledge, thinking back of what things you could have done differently and better, because you have grown.
Yeah.
As a programmer is really good to highlight and bring up.
And it's even good in the interview, if you've got this file now and you, even if it's been like a few weeks, you submitted it and just been like, actually, I would do that different now. I would do that different now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I think Michelle's the same, but I've never actually, never had a portfolio.
No.
So it's not really, it does help in some cases, but it's not required, especially for engineering, to have one.
It's good to get your foot in the door, make you stand out if you've got something other than just a written CV. So that's good to point people to things you've done. And yes, but it isn't essential, but it's something that's good to do.
Yeah. And it also helps, like, if you're like in an interview and they're like, what's something you're proud of? You've already got, like, it's set up and ready to go and nicely like shown. I think something would be that I've always wanted to do but never done is like make a little game and like embed it on a website, if I ever had a website on the browser. So you could be like, look, you can just come to my website and play this little thing I've made.
It's nice to be able to see it rather than just describe it.
Yeah,
sometimes
that makes a huge difference. Sorry.
Anyway, I think we have run out of time, but thank
Yes.
you everyone for listening. Hopefully we've been.
Yes, hopefully you found something in here interesting. And I guess if I had any final advice, the worst thing that can happen is a company saying no. So don't be afraid to go out and try.
Absolutely. Thanks.
See ya.